Ned Nwoko was just 14 years old in 1974. The same year, the Yola International Hotel in Adamawa State was under construction. But by the year 2003, some truth will be revealed about this same hotel, which involved him and the former president of Nigeria, Chief Olusegun Obasanjo.
They have to stay only minimum short period.
It happened that before the construction of this hotel started, the budget made for the project was much bigger than what the government could afford at that moment. They decided to take a loan from overseas, from a bank in Austria. By this time, there were only 12 states in Nigeria, and Yola, which is today the capital city of Adamawa State, was part of a state called Northeastern State of Nigeria. There was no Adamawa State then. It was in 1976 that the Nigerian government decided to create more states. They divided some of the existing 12 states to create 7 additional states, making it a total of 19 states. One of those new states was called Gongola State, and Yola was made the capital of Gongola State. By that same 1976, this Yola International Hotel was almost completed. So after the Gongola State government applied for the loan and the loan process was concluded, the hotel was fully constructed. Then, in 2003, some officials from World Bank visited Nigeria. During their visit, they talked about how the World Bank can help the new government in Nigeria to move the country forward. Remember, before then, Nigeria was under military rule and Abacha was the military leader until he suddenly died in June 1998. It was after his death that an election was conducted in Nigeria and a civilian government took over. That was how Obasanjo became the president of Nigeria.
That Olusegun Obasanjo, retired of the PDP, is hereby declared the winner and is returned elected.
So, when the World Bank officials visited Nigeria in 2003, one of those things they mentioned was the amount of money Nigeria was owing some banks outside Nigeria and the amount of money Nigeria borrowed from other countries. They stated that the total amount was $35 billion. When this was happening, the population of Nigeria was about 130 million people. So many news outlets began to spread the news that with the $35 billion Nigeria was owing, it means every Nigerian was owing about $270 each, which was a huge amount of money in 2003 and even today. Few weeks later, some prominent Nigerians began to counter what the World Bank said. Some of them stated that they expected the amount to be higher, while some said that the amount was not up to $35 billion, that it should be less than what World Bank claimed. One of those who stated that the amount was less than $35 billion was Mr. Atiku Abubakar, who was then the vice president of Nigeria. Remember, before Atiku Abubakar became the vice president, he was a deputy director of customs in Nigeria when Babangida was the head of state. He obviously may have some information about how much Nigeria was owing, considering that as of when he was a customs officer in 1985, customs was still under the Federal Ministry of Finance. So, according to Mr. Ned Nwoko, Atiku stated that Nigeria's debt was $25 billion, while the World Bank officials stated that the amount was $35 billion. $10 billion is a huge amount of money to be considered a mistake. There must be something fishy somewhere. This difference in figures about how much Nigeria was owing became somehow like a national debate. It was during this time that Mr. Ned Nwoko said that he was having a discussion with the then governor of Adamawa State, Mr. Boni Haruna, and the governor told him that the amount of money his state was paying as loan payback was overburdening the state. According to Mr. Ned Nwoko, he also had some discussions with other Nigerian governors who told him the same thing. Apart from the governor of Adamawa, the governors of Niger State, Taraba State, Abia State, and Ondo State complained of the same issue, because what was happening then was that if you are owing any international bank or international organization as a state, the federal government of Nigeria, through the DMO, Debt Management Office, would be aware of such loan and the agreements connected to the loan. So, if the time to pay back maybe 10% of the loan is next month, the DMO will make sure that the 10% is deducted from the allocation the federal government would pay to that particular state next month. Therefore, before the state gets her allocation, every interest or payback that is supposed to be paid would be deducted from the federal allocation they were to receive. So, then, some states who borrowed more was receiving lesser amount of allocation than others.
Can you imagine before then, a state that was getting about $5 billion
a month, naira a month. They had over 2 billion deducted in the name of servicing foreign loans.
After discussing with these governors, Mr. Ned Nwoko knew that something could be done about it, but because these states had no proper documentation of the loans and how much that was remaining to pay, it was somehow a bigger problem than expected. Considering that most of these governors had no idea about how the loans came to be, they couldn't even give proper explanation about the loan. Then, Mr. Ned Nwoko decided to handle the case individually, state by state. Remember what I told you about Gongola State and how Yola was made the capital of Gongola State. By this time, Ned Nwoko was having these discussions with the governors. There was no more Gongola State. Remember, this was happening in 2003. Gongola State was already divided into two states since 1991. The two states are Taraba State and Adamawa State. So, whatever that was owned by Gongola State was shared between Adamawa State and Taraba State. And in that case, whatever loan that Gongola State was owing should be paid by Adamawa and Taraba State, including the loan for the Yola International Hotel. So every month, the federal government was deducting money for the payment of the loan used to build Yola International Hotel from the allocations of Taraba and Adamawa States and the other debts Gongola State was owing. However, after Ned Nwoko discussed with these governors, he decided to start with the case of Gongola State, even though nobody could provide any document on the truth about the loans the state was owing.
There's a hotel in Yola. They call it Yola International Hotel. They said that the state borrowed in those days. I'm talking about in the 70s. Can you imagine $300 million to build that place?
So he took the case to court. But before then, they agreed that he would help these two states to recover the excess loan they had paid for. And when the money is recovered, the states would pay him his consultancy fee, depending on the percentage they agree.
By the time we went to court in Austria, the assumed lender, Bank of Austria, said that they never gave any such loan, that they're not in the business of giving loans to Africa or countries, let alone a state.
At first, many individuals did not believe that such recovery would make any sense. It will just be a waste of time. To them, the money has been paid. The government should focus on making sure that no other money is paid out to anybody, no matter whoever the loan was gotten from, instead of wasting time or wasting money on any consultancy fee. But to Mr. Ned Nwoko, if the Bank of Austria said they did not give any such loan, whoever has been receiving the loan interest should pay back. After he went to court in Austria, took the case to London, he finally got victory. It was a defining moment for these two states in Nigeria. Many other state governors who had been burdened by such unknown loans began to speak up. Remember, when this was happening, Mr. Ned Nwoko was a member of the House of Representatives. Then he was elected to represent Aniocha Oshimili Federal Consultancy, Delta State in 1999. So by 2003, he was still a member of the House of Representatives. Before then, he studied at the University of Keele in England, where he got his law degree and later went to King's College, University of London for his master's. Before he fully returned to Nigeria in 1999, he was a solicitor of the Supreme Court of England and Wales. So, with the knowledge of the law and how to deal with such international issues, he knew that the best thing to do in order to help the other state governors was to get a stronger federal government support.
So, armed with the report from Adamawa and Taraba, I met with Obasanjo, who was president then. I met with him and his economic advisors and gave him the report.
With the report he submitted to Obasanjo, the government decided to set up a committee to look into the matter. During those years, Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala was the finance minister, and before she became Nigeria's finance minister, she was the vice president and corporate secretary of the World Bank Group. So, Obasanjo decided that the members of the committee should include officials from the Ministry of Finance, some officials from Debt Management Office, the office responsible for such international debts and loans, officials from the Central Bank, from Ministry of Justice, including Ned Nwoko's team and others. This committee discovered so many things.
The committee's report, after 3 months, confirmed my initial findings that the loans had been overpaid and that states were indeed overburdened with excess and further charges. and over deductions.
They also discovered that most of the loans that the Nigerian states were paying for were loans borrowed from an international group called London Club and another one called Paris Club. But with the money that had been deducted from these states, most of the loans should have been settled. The Paris Club are a group of countries that came together for the negotiation of loans and debts. They are mostly countries that offer loans to other countries. Currently, the club has 22 members, and maybe if a country like Nigeria wants a loan, it can approach the members of the Paris Club and know if any of these members will be interested to offer the loan to Nigeria. If any of the members of the Paris Club accepts to give the loan to Nigeria, it is then the duty of the club to act as a negotiator between Nigeria and the country willing to give the loan. Precisely, the major duty of the club is to negotiate debts and settlements. On the other hand, the London Club is still the same type of club like the Paris Club. But in the case of the London Club, the members of the club are commercial banks that lend money to countries and companies. Most of these banks are banks from countries like the United States, Japan, Germany, France, and the UK, while the Paris Club is made up of countries that lend money to countries. In fact, Nigeria as a country took its first loan from the Paris Club in 1964, which was a sum of $13.1 million. The loan was given to Nigeria by the Italian government, and Nigeria took this loan for the construction of the place we know today as Kainji Dam in Niger State. So, when this committee began to unveil the issues behind these loans, after they discovered that most of the loans had been paid in excess, the next step is to find a way to recover the excess money paid. That was when the different states in Nigeria began to employ different consultants to help in getting back the money. There is a group in Nigeria called ALGON, Association of Local Governments of Nigeria. This group is an umbrella group that unites the local governments in Nigeria, and they are responsible for the fighting of the interests of Nigeria local governments. So after it was discovered that the total amount that will be refunded to the different states in Nigeria was $10 billion, and the amount that will be refunded to the local governments was $3.1 billion, because most of the local governments had their allocation deducted when these loans were being paid for. Then, this association called ALGON approached Mr. Ned Nwoko to help them recover the money due to the local governments. They agreed that he would be paid 20% of the money if he can be able to recover the $3.1 billion. And then, according to some reports, Mr. Ned Nwoko also agreed with some states to pay him 10% or 20% of the money to be recovered if he eventually recovers the money, with the percentage maybe depending on the amount to be recovered and depending on the difficulty of each recovery. In this case, he is now working in two parts. His law firm, Ned Nwoko and Co-Solicitors, were working for the states, while his other consultancy firm, Liners International Limited, worked for the local government's funds recovery. Many years passed by, and the good news was that the money for the states, the $10 billion, was approved to be paid to the states, and the $3.1 billion was approved to be paid to the local governments. But there was a bad news. The bad news was that the year 2016 was the time the federal government started to pay each state and local governments their refund. And according to the agreements Mr. Ned Nwoko had with the states and local governments, as the money was being paid, he should be receiving his consultancy fee as well. But from that 2016 to 2019, when the last batch of the refund was paid to the states and local governments, because the refund was not paid once, it was refunded instrumentally in batch. So when this money started coming in, the states and the local governments suddenly stopped paying the consultancy fees.
These refunds were eventually made in full to both the states and local governments. The issues has been, what about my fees? Why wouldn't they pay my fees?
This new development turned into multiple court cases now between Ned Nwoko and the Nigerian Governors Forum. This issue was that by the time the first batch of funds was to be paid to the states, the Nigerian Governors Forum, NGF, took up the control of how the funds would be paid.
This is how the whole problem started. Money meant for consultants was paid to NGF. This was $86 million and 19 billion naira.
Some people suggested that the governors felt the consultancy fee was too much, and they wanted to stop it. You know, there is this agreement you enter into. When it is time to pay, you start thinking twice. At some point, they later paid some part of the money to Mr. Ned Nwoko, but there was still some balance yet to be paid. Then, in 2018, the federal government came into the matter and was able to create an agreement between Mr. Ned and the governors. The agreement was that he would be paid $350 million as his full balance, even though the actual balance was higher than that amount, according to Mr. Ned Nwoko. But the amount was agreed because the federal government needed just to settle the matter. Even after this agreement, the governors didn't settle him off, and when he confronted the then chairman of the governors forum, he told him that the money has been used for something else.
What he told me was shocking. He told me that he couldn't pay me, that money was diverted because it was needed for elections in Bauchi, Ekiti, and Ondo elections.
It got to a point that the governor started suspecting him that he had some side deals when he was helping them recover the money. So the governors decided to set up a committee of inquiry to investigate the work he did for them. According to Mr. Ned, they contacted Dr. George Ubo, the CEO of Panic Alert Security Systems Limited, to investigate his work.
And I said, George, on what basis who are you to? He said, in fact, one of the governors spoke to me then that if I don't allow him to investigate my work, that they will not support my payment.
Then, after some months, George Ubo submitted his report and urged the governors to pay Liners International Limited. But the whole thing took another twist. According to Mr. Ned Nwoko, the service fee that the governors should pay Dr. George became a problem.
Do you know that George Ubo's fee for the work that they asked him to do is also being contested by the governors? They now said that they want George Ubo's fee to also be investigated by another auditor. So the auditing the auditor.
So this case has now turned to several phases, and up till 2022-2023, the matters were still argued in courts, pending when the conclusion will be made. The major discussion in this video is the debts and how it was recovered, and finally, how the local governments and states later got their money back. I believe you have learnt a lot from this. At this point, thank you so much for your time. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe. Thank you.